3 weeks is a long time, Will. I folded one of his button-down shirts, placing it carefully in the suitcase spread open on our bed. I know. Linda, I'm not thrilled about it either. William ran his fingers through his salt and pepper hair, a gesture I'd grown familiar with over our 15 years of marriage. It signaled stress, but this client could mean a huge commission. We've talked about renovating the kitchen for years. This could finally make it happen. I nodded, though something felt off. In all our years together, his business trips had never exceeded 10 days. 3 weeks seemed excessive, especially with how vague he'd been about the details. William worked as a real estate developer specializing in commercial properties across the Northeast. Typically, he shared every aspect of his deals with me, from the square footage to the quirks of the clients. This time, the information came in fragments, changing slightly with each retelling. Remember, I'll have spotty reception in some of those rural areas, he continued, checking his passport for the third time that morning. Another odd detail, since when did domestic property deals require a passport? You still haven't told me exactly where you're going, I said, trying to keep my tone light despite the knot forming in my stomach. I told you, honey. Starting in Boston, then making my way through upstate New York, possibly crossing into Canada for a meeting in Toronto. Canada? That's new, he shrugged, avoiding my eyes. It came up yesterday. The client has interests on both sides of the border. As I watched him pack his toiletries, I wondered when we'd started keeping secrets from each other. Or perhaps I was overreacting. At 43, William was at the peak of his career, and I knew how important this was to him, to us. We'd moved to this suburb outside of Philadelphia 5 years ago, buying a house that stretched our budget but promised the stable, comfortable life we'd always wanted. No children. That hadn't worked out for us despite years of trying, but we had each other, our careers, and a life many would envy. I'll miss you, I said, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. He turned, his expression softening as he kissed my forehead. I'll miss you more. Use the time to relax. You've been working too hard. My job as a high school English teacher had been particularly demanding lately. Budget cuts meant larger classes, and the new standardized testing requirements had most of us drowning in paperwork. Actually, I said, I might finally tackle our bedroom. I've been wanting to rearrange things for months. He stiffened, almost imperceptibly. The bedroom, what's wrong with it? Nothing's wrong with it. I just think the flow could be better. Maybe move the bed to the other wall, get some new curtains. Finally, hang those pictures we've had leaning against the wall for 2 years. Sounds like a project. His voice had an edge I couldn't quite place. Don't hurt yourself moving furniture. Get Jim from next door to help if you need to move the heavier pieces. I'm not helpless, Will. I pulled away slightly. I can manage to push a bed across a room. Of course you can. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I just worry about you, that's all. The following morning, I stood in our driveway, watching Williams's car disappear around the corner. The April air carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and blooming dogwoods. A perfect spring day in our quiet neighborhood. Our 2-story colonial looked picturesque with its white siding and black shutters, manicured lawn, and the maple tree we'd planted when we first moved in. From the outside, everything appeared perfect. I spent that first day alone, catching up on grading papers, trying to ignore the silence of the house. By evening, I'd received only a brief text from Will, landed safely, heading into meetings. We'll call when I can. No, I love you. No details about his day, just the bare minimum of communication. That night, I slept poorly, sprawled across our king-size bed, unused to having so much space to myself. Around 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep entirely and wandered into William's home office. I'd never been one to snoop, but something compelled me to look through his desk drawers. Everything was meticulously organized. Bills in one folder, insurance documents in another, property records in a third. Nothing suspicious, nothing out of place. What exactly was I looking for? Evidence of what? I closed the drawers, ashamed of my mistrust. William had never given me reason to doubt him before. We'd built a life on mutual respect and honesty, or so I thought. The next morning, I stood in our bedroom, coffee in hand, surveying the space with fresh eyes. The heavy oak furniture had come with us from our previous apartment. The bed frame and matching dressers had been a splurge early in our marriage and positioned against the wall that adjoined the bathroom. On the opposite wall stood William's dresser, with mine positioned near the window. The arrangement had served us well enough, but it had always felt cramped to me. "Time for a change," I said aloud to the empty room. I spent the morning emptying drawers and closets, creating an inventory of everything that needed to be moved. Around noon, I began the actual rearranging, starting with the nightstands and smaller items. By mid-afternoon, I'd worked up the courage to tackle the bed. I removed the mattress first, propping it against the wall. The box spring followed, leaving only the heavy oak frame. I tried pushing it, but it barely budged. After several attempts, I realized I would need to disassemble it. Armed with a screwdriver and Allen wrench, I began removing the side rails. The headboard was secured to the wall with heavy brackets, William's precaution against earthquakes, though we rarely experienced them in Pennsylvania. As I unscrewed the last bracket, the headboard shifted slightly, revealing something unusual. There appeared to be a gap between the headboard and the wall, wider than it should have been. I ran my fingers along the edge of the headboard and felt something hard and metallic, a handle concealed within the woodwork of the headboard itself. My heart pounded as I pulled on it. With a soft click, a compartment opened, a hollowed-out section of the headboard, perfectly disguised to blend with the wood grain. Inside lay a stack of envelopes bound with a rubber band, a small leather-bound notebook, and several photographs. I stared at the hidden cache, my hands trembling. This wasn't just a secret compartment. It was deliberate concealment. My husband had built this, or had it built for the specific purpose of hiding these items from me. With unsteady fingers, I reached for the photographs first. The top image showed a woman with dark hair cascading over bare shoulders, her smile intimate and knowing. She was beautiful in an effortless way, high cheekbones, wide-set eyes, and full lips. I didn't recognize her, but the background was familiar. Our vacation rental in Cape Cod from 3 summers ago. I flipped to the next photo. The same woman, this time standing beside William on what appeared to be a boat. His arm was wrapped around her waist, his expression more relaxed and joyful than I'd seen in years. The final photograph showed them in what was unmistakably a hotel room, the rumpled sheets and their state of undress, leaving little to the imagination. My stomach lurched. I dropped the photos and stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it to the toilet before I vomited. When the heaving subsided, I slumped against the cool tile wall, tears streaming down my face. An affair. My husband was having an affair, but it was worse than that. The vacation photo was from 3 years ago. This wasn't a recent indiscretion, a midlife crisis, or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was sustained deception. Years of lies woven into the fabric of our marriage. When I could finally stand again, I returned to the hidden compartment. My hands shook as I untied the stack of envelopes. Each one contained a handwritten letter, all from someone named Elise. The earliest was dated 4 years ago, soon after we'd moved into this house. "My dearest William, being apart these 2 weeks has been torturous. I find myself reaching for you in the night, only to grasp empty air. When you told me about your new house, I felt that familiar pang of jealousy. She gets to build a life with you in the open while I remain in the shadows. But then I remember our time together, those stolen moments that sustain me, and I know what we have is worth the secrecy. I couldn't read anymore. I gathered everything, the photos, the letters, the notebook, and carried them downstairs to the dining room table. Spreading them out, I began to piece together the timeline of my husband's betrayal. The letters revealed a relationship that had begun 5 years ago when William was working on a development project in Baltimore. Elise Chambers was an architect on the project. Their professional relationship had quickly evolved into something more, continuing long after the project was completed. There were references to weekend trips disguised as business meetings, vacations that overlapped with ones he'd taken with me, and plans for future rendezvous. The notebook contained what appeared to be financial records, money transfers, account numbers, and property information for a condo in Baltimore. My husband had purchased a second home that I knew nothing about. As I sat surrounded by evidence of William's double life, my phone buzzed with a text from him. Meetings running long. Hope your day's going well. Love you. The casual deception of it made my blood boil. I wanted to call him immediately, to scream and demand explanations, but something held me back. If I confronted him now, he'd have time to prepare, to construct more lies, to potentially destroy evidence I hadn't yet discovered. No, I needed to understand the full scope of his betrayal first. I needed to know exactly who my husband really was before I decided what to do next. I returned everything to the hidden compartment except for one letter that contained Elise's phone number. Then I repositioned the headboard against the wall, securing it as if nothing had been disturbed. The rest of the furniture rearrangement would have to wait. I had more important things to focus on now. That night, as I lay awake in the bed I'd shared to William for years, I realized with startling clarity that I'd never really known my husband at all. The man I'd built my life around was a carefully constructed fiction. Tomorrow I would begin unraveling the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I wouldn't just be a victim of William's deception. I would become an investigator of it, and God help him when I discovered what else he was hiding. Morning arrived with the harsh glare of reality. I hadn't slept more than a few fitful hours, my mind racing with questions and scenarios, each more painful than the last. How many times had William lied to my face? How many business trips had actually been rendezvous with Elise? Was she the only one, or were there others? I showered and dressed mechanically, then called the school to request a substitute for the day. Stomach bug, I explained weakly to the department head. Not entirely aligned. My stomach still churned with nausea every time I thought about those photographs. With trembling hands, I made coffee, then returned to the bedroom. I removed everything from the hidden compartment again, this time bringing it to the dining room table where I could spread it out properly. I needed to approach this methodically, like the research papers I guided my students through. Evidence, analysis, conclusions. The letters provided the most information. They spanned 4 years, though their frequency had decreased over time. The early ones overflowed with passion and longing, while the more recent correspondence focused on practical matters, when they could meet, financial arrangements, and vague references to their future together. Several mentioned a place called the Shore House. Elise wrote about weekends there, describing sunsets over water and mornings spent in bed. I searched our financial records for any property purchases I wasn't aware of, but found nothing obvious. The notebook contained what appeared to be account information for offshore banking, columns of numbers, dates, and initials that made little sense to me. One thing was clear, though: William had been moving significant sums of money without my knowledge. Around noon, I took a break, my head pounding from the strain of discovery and lack of sleep. I made a sandwich I couldn't taste and stared out the kitchen window at our carefully maintained backyard. The garden I'd planted last fall was showing the first signs of life, daffodils and crocuses pushing through the soil. I'd always found gardening therapeutic, the rhythm of the seasons providing comfort and continuity. Now it felt like just another facade, a pretty picture hiding the rot beneath. After lunch, I turned to William's home office again, this time with purpose rather than vague suspicion. I searched more thoroughly, checking behind drawers, under furniture, inside books. Nothing. Either there were no more hiding places, or William had been careful to keep his most damning secrets elsewhere. I booted up his desktop computer. It required a password, of course. I tried our anniversary, his birthday, combinations of our names, all the usual suspects. Nothing worked. After several failed attempts, I noticed a post-it stuck to the underside of the desk with a string of seemingly random characters. Revere B2, 2? I typed it in, and the computer unlocked. Riverbend, the name of the Baltimore development project where he'd met Elise. The password worked, but disappointment followed. Williams's computer contained nothing suspicious, just work documents, email that synced to his phone, which he had with him, and the usual assortment of programs. Either he was careful to keep his digital tracks clean, or he used another device for his illicit communications. With that avenue temporarily blocked, I returned to the letters. One of them mentioned Elise's workplace, an architectural firm called Modernist Design Group in Baltimore. A quick Google search confirmed its existence and provided a phone number. My heart raced as I dialed. What would I even say? "Hi, I'm the wife of the man you're sleeping with." A receptionist answered on the third ring. "Modernist Design Group, how may I direct your call?" "Elise Chambers, please." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, artificially casual. "I'm sorry, Miss Chambers no longer works here. Would you like to speak with another architect?" "No, thank you." I paused. "Do you know where she went?" "I'm an old friend trying to reconnect. I believe she started her own practice." "One moment. Let me see if I have that information." I held my breath. "Yes, she's with Chambers Architectural Solutions now. Would you like that number?" I wrote it down with shaking hands, thanked the receptionist, and ended the call. I wasn't ready to contact Elise directly, not yet. But having her information gave me a sense of control, however illusory. Next, I checked our phone records online. William had insisted on keeping our mobile phones on separate accounts for simplifying work reimbursements, he'd claimed. Now, I wondered if it had been to hide his communications with Elise. Our landline records, however, were accessible to me. Hours of scanning through call logs revealed a pattern. Every few weeks, there was a call to a Baltimore area code that lasted anywhere from 20 minutes to over an hour. The calls always occurred when I had evening faculty meetings or book club times when William knew I wouldn't be home. I wrote down the number and did a reverse lookup online. It belonged to a prepaid phone with no name attached. Clever, well, I thought bitterly. By evening, my initial shock had hardened into something colder, more focused. I ordered takeout from the Thai place down the street, barely tasting the pad Thai as I continued my investigation. William texted around 8. "Just finished a long day of meetings. How's the bedroom rearrangement going?" I stared at the message, contemplating how to respond. Should I confront him now over text? No. This conversation needed to happen face to face. I needed to see his expression when I presented what I'd found. "Taking longer than expected," I replied, which was true enough. "How's the weather up there?" "Cold for April. Might snow tomorrow." I immediately checked the weather forecast for Boston. Clear skies, temperatures in the high 50s. Another lie. I spent the rest of the evening creating a timeline of William's affair, cross-referencing the letters with our calendar and his business trip itineraries from the past few years. A pattern emerged of long weekends and extended trips that coincided with mentions in Elise's letters. Some of these trips had indeed been for a legitimate business side, spoken with clients or colleagues who confirmed his presence. Others, however, appeared to be complete fabrications. The most recent letters contained references to finalizing things and making arrangements. One passage stood out. "Everything's settled next month. We won't have to hide anymore. I can hardly believe we're finally reaching the finish line after all this time." What finish line? What were they planning? I checked our financial accounts again, looking for any unusual activity. Our joint checking and savings accounts showed nothing suspicious, but I had limited access to Williams's personal accounts. I could see the balances, but not the transactions. His primary personal account had been steadily decreasing over the past 6 months, with nearly $30,000 withdrawn. For what purpose? My investigation continued into the next day. I called Williams's office, disguising my voice and asking for him. His assistant informed me that Mr. Reynolds is out of the office on business for the next 3 weeks. At least that part wasn't a lie. I drove to our bank and spoke with the manager, explaining that I needed information about recent transactions on our joint accounts for tax purposes. The manager was helpful, printing statements that showed nothing unusual. When I inquired about Williams's personal accounts, however, I hit a wall. I'm sorry, Mrs. Reynolds, but those accounts are in your husband's name only. I can't provide transaction details without his authorization. I nodded, thanked her, and left, frustration building. There had to be another way. That afternoon, I remembered something. Years ago, when William had set up online access for his accounts, he'd used our shared email address for the initial registration. The bank would still send notifications to that email whenever there was a large transaction or statement available. I logged into our rarely used shared email account and searched for communications from the bank. Among the routine notices were alerts for several large wire transfers from Williams's personal account to a bank in the Cayman Islands. The most recent had been just 2 weeks ago, $50,000 transferred to something called Horizon Holdings. A quick search revealed that Horizon Holdings was a shell company, the kind used for property purchases when the buyer wanted to remain anonymous. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture I could barely comprehend. William wasn't just having an affair, he was planning to leave me, and he'd been systematically moving money offshore, presumably where I couldn't claim it in a divorce. But why the elaborate deception? Why not just ask for a divorce? We had no children to consider, and Pennsylvania was an equitable distribution state. He'd have to split our marital assets, but he'd still be financially secure. Unless there was more money than I knew about. Unless William had been hiding income for years. That thought sent me back to his office, searching more thoroughly. This time, I checked the air vent near the Flora hiding place I'd read about in one of my mystery novels. Nothing. Behind the bookshelf? Nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed that one of the floorboards under his desk didn't quite match the others. Using a letter opener, I pried it up, revealing a small space containing a USB drive and a burner phone. My hands trembled as I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. It contained hundreds of files, financial records, property deeds, and correspondence that painted a damning picture. William hadn't just been developing commercial properties. He'd been involved in a complex money laundering operation, using real estate transactions to clean money for what appeared to be an organized crime syndicate based in Baltimore. The emails discussed processing fees and cleaning services, thinly veiled references to laundering money through property deals. One spreadsheet detailed over $3 million in processed funds over the past 5 years, with William's cut coming to approximately $750,000. I felt physically ill. My husband wasn't just a cheater, he was a criminal. And if these records were accurate, he was involved with dangerous people. The burner phone contained only one contact, EE, and a series of text messages that confirmed my worst fears. Everything's set. Tickets confirmed for May 5th, one way. Cayman account secure. House closing on the 3rd. What about Elle? Is she suspicious? Clueless as always. We'll handle it after I return. Then we're free. The last message had been sent just before William left on his business trip. I sank to the floor. The phone clutched in my hand. Handle it could mean many things, but in the context of a man involved with organized crime who was planning to disappear with his mistress and a small fortune, it took on a sinister connotation. Was my husband planning to kill me? The thought seemed melodramatic, like something from the crime novels I enjoyed reading. But the evidence suggested William had far more to lose in a divorce than I'd initially realized. If his criminal activities came to light, he'd face serious prison time. And I was the loose end that could unravel everything. I checked the most recent text messages again. William was supposed to return on April 28th, just 10 days from now. Then, according to the messages, he would handle me, and on May 5th, he and Elise would leave the country for good. I had less than 2 weeks to figure out what to do. The burner phone buzzed in my hand, startling me so badly I nearly dropped it. A new message from call me, need to talk about the Elle situation. My blood ran cold. The Elle situation. They were discussing me right now. Should I respond pretending to be William? No, that was too risky. If I said something inconsistent with their previous conversations, it would raise suspicions. Better to gather more information first. I returned everything to its hiding place, my mind racing. I needed help, but who could I trust? Going to the police seemed logical, but what evidence did I really have? Financial records that I'd obtained by breaking into my husband's private accounts and hidden storage? Text messages that were ambiguous at best? They'd dismiss me as a paranoid, jealous wife. I needed more concrete evidence, and I needed a plan to protect myself in case handling the L situation meant what I feared it did. That night, I barely slept, jumping at every sound in the house. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed, claiming I'd lost my keys. I also contacted a security company about installing cameras, scheduling the work for the following day. Then I made another call to an old friend from college who now worked as a private investigator in Philadelphia. Sarah had helped me once before when a stalker student had become obsessed with me early in my teaching career. She'd been discreet, effective, and most importantly, hadn't asked too many questions. Linda? God, it's been 2 years? Sarah's voice was warm with genuine pleasure. At least, I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. How are you? We exchanged brief pleasantries before I cut to the chase. Sarah, I need your help, professionally. It's single quotes as ... complicated. There was a pause. How complicated are we talking? Potentially criminal activity, complicated. Possibly dangerous, complicated. Jesus, Linda. She lowered her voice. Are you in immediate danger? I don't think so. Not yet, but I will be in about 10 days. I'm coming over. Text me your address. 2 hours later, Sarah sat at my dining room table, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. Her expression remained neutral, professional, but I could see the concern in her eyes. This is serious, Linda. If these financial records are legitimate, your husband is involved in some major league criminal activity. And these texts, ... ball quotes, she shook her head. They're not explicit enough to prove intent to harm, but combined with everything else, they're concerning. What should I do? She thought for a moment. First, we document everything. I'll make copies of all this and store it securely. Then we need to find out exactly what William is planning when he returns. How do we do that? We monitor the burner phone, and we find Elise Chambers. She might be willing to talk if she thinks William is keeping secrets from her too. The idea of confronting my husband's mistress made my stomach clench, but Sarah was right. Elise might be the key to understanding what William was planning. There's something else, Sarah said, her expression grave. If William is involved with the kind of people these records suggest, he might not be working alone on whatever he's planning for you. We need to assume he could have someone watching the house reporting back to him. The thought sent a chill through me. You think he has someone spying on me? It's possible. These organizations don't take chances. If William has told them you're a potential threat, they might be keeping tabs on you. I glanced toward the window, suddenly feeling exposed. What do? We give them nothing to report. You go about your business normally. Finish rearranging the bedroom. Go to work. Meet friends for lunch. Act like nothing's wrong. Sarah leaned forward. Meanwhile, I'll be watching whoever's watching you. The plan was set. Sarah would conduct surveillance around our neighborhood, looking for anyone who seemed out of place or showed too much interest in our house. She'd also try to locate Elise Chambers and approach her carefully. I would maintain my normal routine while secretly preparing for whatever William had planned. Sarah helped me set up a secure email account and gave me a prepaid phone for our communications. Don't use it from inside your house, she warned. If there are any listening devices, they might pick up the conversation. Listening devices. The paranoia was starting to feel overwhelming, but I couldn't afford to dismiss any possibility, no matter how far-fetched it seemed. After Sarah left, I stood in the center of our half-dismantled bedroom, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage. The headboard remained propped against the wall, its secret compartment once again sealed. The mattress and box spring leaned awkwardly nearby. I needed to finish what I'd started, not just for appearances, but for my own sanity. I spent the rest of the day rearranging furniture, hanging new curtains, and positioning the bed against the opposite wall, away from the bathroom. By evening, the room looked completely different, brighter, more spacious, with no trace of the secrets it had held. As I made the bed with fresh sheets, my phone buzzed with a text from William. "How's it going, Monsieur?" I stared at the screen, at the casual deception in those 5 words. The man who wrote them was planning to leave the country with another woman, possibly after ensuring I couldn't interfere. "Miss you too," I replied, the lie bitter on my tongue. "The bedroom looks great. Can't wait for you to see it." If only he knew what else I'd seen. If only he knew that his carefully constructed house of lies was beginning to crumble. As I drifted off to sleep that night, one thought kept circling in my mind. The man I'd married, the man I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, was a stranger to me. And in 10 days, that stranger would return home with secrets far darker than I could have imagined. The game had changed. It wasn't just about surviving a betrayal anymore. It was about surviving, period. The days that followed settled into an unsettling rhythm of normalcy and secret preparation. I returned to teaching, smiling at colleagues who asked about Williams's trip, lying smoothly about renovation plans for our kitchen. In the evenings, I met with Sarah, who reported on her investigation in hushed tones as we walked through a nearby park, away from potential listening devices. "I've identified 2 individuals conducting surveillance on your house," she told me on the 4th day. "One is parked down the street in a blue sedan, rotates with another guy every 8 hours. The second watches from the coffee shop across from your school during the day. Who are they?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Based on some contacts I have in law enforcement, they appear to be associates of the Donovan family, a crime syndicate based in Baltimore. They specialize in real estate fraud and money laundering. The Donovans." I'd seen that name in the financial records on the USB drive, listed as silent partners in several of William's developments. "Have you found Elise yet?" I asked. Sarah nodded. "I located her yesterday. She lives in a condo in Baltimore's Harbor East District. I've been monitoring her movements, looking for an opportunity to approach her safely." "And William? Any sign of him?" "None in Boston or upstate New York, which supports our theory that he lied about his destination. I have a contact checking hotels in Baltimore, but so far, nothing. So William wasn't where he claimed to be." The confirmation of yet another lie shouldn't have hurt, but it did. A fresh cut on an already bleeding wound. That night, I received a call from William on my regular phone. I stepped outside onto the back patio to take it, conscious of Sarah's warning about possible listening devices inside. "Hey, honey." His voice was warm, familiar. "How are things going?" "Fine," I replied, amazed at how steady I sounded. "Busy week at school. How's the client?" "Demanding." He chuckled. "But I think we're making progress. The deal's more complicated than I anticipated." "Is that why you haven't been calling much?" I injected just the right note of gentle reproach into my voice. "Partly that, partly the reception issues I mentioned. I'm sorry. Linda, I know it's been longer than we planned." We exchanged a few more minutes of small talk, fabricating details about my week, him lying about meetings and site visits that had never occurred. When we hung up, I felt dirty, as if the deception had left a physical residue on my skin. The next day brought a breakthrough. Sarah texted me during my lunch break. "Found So meeting you after school. Usual place." I could barely focus on teaching my afternoon classes, my mind racing with possibilities. Had she located William? Was he in Baltimore with Elise, as we suspected? When we met at the park, Sarah handed me a tablet with several photographs on the screen. "These were taken yesterday in Baltimore," she said quietly. The first showed William and a dark-haired woman, Elias, from the hidden photo, entering an office building. The second captured them in what appeared to be a restaurant, heads close together in conversation. The third made my heart stop. William, Elise, and 2 men in expensive suits engaged in what looked like an intense discussion. The men with them are Michael Donovan and his son, Patrick. Sarah explained. They're high-ranking members of the organization I mentioned. What are they discussing? I asked, though I already had a sickening suspicion. I couldn't get close enough to hear, but based on the body language and the documents they were reviewing, it appeared to be a business meeting. They spent nearly 3 hours together. I stared at the images, at William's familiar profile, beside people he'd never mentioned, planning things he'd never shared. So, it's true. He's involved with organized crime. Sarah nodded grimly. And there's more. I managed to approach Elise today, posing as a potential client for her architectural firm. I gained access to her office and planted a listening device. My eyes widened. Is that legal? Sarah gave me a look that clearly said now is not the time to worry about legalities. I recorded a conversation between her and William this afternoon. You need to hear it. She handed me earbuds and played the recording on her phone. Williams's voice came through first, tense and urgent. We need to move the timetable up. Linda's been rearranging the bedroom. Elise. So? People redecorate all the time? William, the headboard. Elise. She moved the goddamn headboard. A pause. Then Elise's voice, suddenly serious. Did she find it? I don't think so. She hasn't said anything, and she's not a good enough actress to hide that kind of discovery. But it's too close for her comfort. So what's the new plan? I'm going home early, next Tuesday instead of Sunday. We'll proceed with everything else as scheduled. The Donovans are finalizing the paperwork for the Cayman property, and our new identities are almost ready. What about Linda? You said you had that handled? A long pause. I do. It's better if you don't know the details. Plausible deniability. Will, you promised no one would get hurt. And no one will if everything goes according to plan. Linda will be ... taken care of. That's all you need to know. The recording ended, and I sat frozen. The implications of what I'd just heard washing over me in sickening waves. He's coming back early, I whispered. And he's planning... it's Sarah. He's planning to kill me, isn't he? Sarah didn't sugarcoat it. It sounds that way. Or have someone else do it. We need to go to the police. With what? A recording obtained illegally? Financial records you accessed without permission. They'd throw it all out, and William would be tipped off that we're on to him. Sarah shook her head. We need more concrete evidence, something that will stand up in court. We only have 5 days before he returns, I reminded her, panic rising in my throat. Then we'd better work fast. The next morning, I called in sick to school, unable to face my students while my life was unraveling. Sarah arrived early, bringing surveillance equipment and a small handgun. Do you know how to use this? She asked, placing it on the kitchen table. I shook my head. Then I'll teach you. You need to be able to protect yourself if something happens before we gather enough evidence. We spent the morning reviewing Williams's financial records in detail, identifying patterns of transactions and connections to the Donovan family's known businesses. Sarah photographed everything, creating a documentation trail that might eventually be useful to law enforcement. In the afternoon, she monitored the listening device in Elisa's office while I searched the house, again, looking for any additional evidence William might have hidden. I found nothing new, but the process kept me occupied, prevented me from dwelling on the terrible reality of my situation. Around 4 o'clock, Sarah burst into the living room, her expression urgent. Elise just received a package of documents from William's office. She's reviewing them now, and based on what she's saying on the phone, they contain details about all of the money laundering operations from the past 5 years. Where are the documents? In her office? She's planning to meet William for dinner tonight to discuss them. I made a split-second decision. We need those documents. Sarah looked at me sharply. What are you suggesting? Break into her office. Tonight while she's at dinner with William. That's burglary. Linda. And what William's planning is murder. I met her gaze steadily. I'm fighting for my life here. After a long moment, Sarah nodded. I'll need help. I have a colleague, someone I trust completely. He has experience with this kind of operation. I didn't ask what this kind of operation meant. I didn't want to know. While Sarah made arrangements, I monitored the burner phone I'd found in Williams's office. A new text arrived from Elise. Documents received. Meeting still on for 7:30. Williams's response came moments later. Confirmed. The usual place. Make sure you bring everything. I showed the exchange to Sarah, who relayed it to her colleague. They would need to move quickly while both William and Elise were occupied. The waiting was excruciating. I paced our living room, jumping at every sound, imagining William somehow discovering our plans and returning early to confront me. Sarah stayed with me, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of my anxiety. At 9:45, her phone buzzed. She answered, listened intently, then ended the call with a simple, "Good." "Come here." "What happened?" I asked. Mission accomplished. My colleague retrieved the documents and is bringing them here now. 30 minutes later, a nondescript man in his 40s arrived carrying a manila envelope. He handed it to Sarah, without a word, nodded to me, and left. The envelope contained a treasure trove of incriminating evidence, detailed records of money laundering operations, property transactions with inflated values, offshore account numbers, and correspondence between William and various members of the Donovan organization. Most damning of all was a document titled Exit Strategy, which outlined a plan for William and Elise to disappear with approximately $4 million in laundered funds, utilizing new identities created with the help of the Donovans. A separate section labeled Contingencies contained a chilling entry. LR, staged accident, home invasion, if necessary. DF has contact, $50K. Non-negotiable. I stared at the initials. Linda Reynolds, me, and DF. Possibly the person William had contracted to handle me. "This is it," Sarah said, examining the documents. "This is what we need. These records detail criminal activity across state lines. That makes it federal. We can take this to the FBI. Will they act quickly enough, with evidence as concrete?" Sarah nodded. "Absolutely. Money laundering at this level is a major priority for them, especially when it involves organized crime." The next morning, Sarah arranged a meeting with an FBI agent she trusted. Agent Melissa Chun reviewed our evidence in a private room at the local field office, her expression growing increasingly serious as she examined each document. "This is substantial," she finally said. "We've been investigating the Donovan organization for years, but they're careful, very few paper trails. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." "What about my husband?" I asked. "And his plan to ... I couldn't bring myself to say it aloud. "The threat against you is our immediate concern," Agent Chun assured me. "We'll need to move quickly to ensure your safety while we build the case." What followed was a whirlwind of activity. I was moved to a safe house, while FBI agents established surveillance on William, Elise, and the Donovan family members. Agent Chun explained that they needed to catch William in the act of meeting with the Donovans to strengthen their case, which meant waiting until he returned to Philadelphia. "What if he realizes something's wrong?" I asked. "What if he runs? We have agents watching all possible exit points. He's not going anywhere without us knowing about it." 4 days later, William texted me from his regular phone. "Coming home tomorrow instead of Sunday? Wrap things up early. Can't wait to see you." And the new bedroom. I showed the message to Agent Chun, who nodded grimly. "Right on schedule. We'll be ready." The plan was set. I would return home, acting as if nothing was wrong. FBI agents would be stationed nearby, monitoring every movement. When William arrived, they would wait for evidence of his criminal intent before moving in. The thought of facing William, pretending I didn't know about his betrayal and murderous plans, filled me with dread. But I was done being the unsuspecting wife. This time, I would be the one setting the trap. The next morning, I stood in our bedroom looking at the space I'd rearranged during those first days of discovery. It felt like years had passed since then, though it had been less than 2 weeks. I touched the headboard repositioned against a different wall now, remembering the shock of finding Williams's hidden cache of secrets. A car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I saw William emerge, looking exactly as he always did. Tailored suit, confident stride. Same man I'd married 15 years ago, except now I knew he wasn't that man at all. I took a deep breath and went downstairs to greet my husband, to greet the stranger who had planned my death. William's smile was warm, genuine looking as he stepped through the front door. He dropped his suitcase and wrapped me in an embrace that felt sickeningly familiar. God, I missed you. I forced myself to hug him back, to smile up at him, as if my world hadn't shattered. You're early. I thought you weren't coming back until Sunday. Managed to wrap things up ahead of schedule. He kissed my forehead. Couldn't wait to get home to you. Couldn't wait to get home to murder me, I thought, but kept the smile plastered on my face. How was the trip? Successful? Very. He glanced around the living room. Everything looks the same down here. I thought you were on a redecorating spree. Just the bedroom for now. I gestured toward the stairs. Want to see? In a minute. William loosened his tie. Let me grab a drink first. Been a long day of travel. I watched as he moved to the kitchen with the ease of familiarity, opening cabinets, retrieving a glass, pouring himself a scotch. How many times had I observed this routine over our years together? How many times had I found comfort in these domestic rhythms? Now each movement seemed sinister, laden with hidden meaning. Was he stalling? Looking for signs that I'd discovered his secrets? So he said, leaning against the counter, "Tell me about your 2 weeks. Anything exciting happened while I was gone?" The casual question nearly broke me. Anything exciting? Only discovering that my entire marriage was a lie, that my husband was a criminal, that he was planning to kill me and disappear with his mistress? Not really, I shrugged. Work was busy. I spent most evenings working on the bedroom. William nodded, his eyes studying me with an intensity I might not have noticed before. You look tired. End of the school year. Always draining. He sipped his scotch, then set the glass down with deliberate care. Let's see this bedroom makeover you've been working on. As we climbed the stairs together, I felt his hand at the small of my back, a gesture that had once seemed affectionate but now felt possessive, threatening. Agent Chun's words echoed in my mind. Get him talking about the bedroom renovation. See if he checks the headboard. The bedroom door stood open. William paused at the threshold, surveying the changes. Wow, he said, his tone impressed. You really did rearrange everything. Do you like it? I asked, watching his face carefully. It's different. Opens up the space. His gaze traveled to the headboard, now positioned against the opposite wall. The bed is all the way over here now, huh? I thought it would be better away from the bathroom door. More privacy. William approached the bed slowly, running his hand along the wooden frame. This was quite an undertaking on your own. Heavy furniture, I said, standing near the doorway, maintaining distance between us. Had to take it apart, of course. The headboard was the trickiest part. His hand froze momentarily on the headboard, then resumed its casual exploration. Oh, why's that? All those brackets attaching it to the wall? You were very thorough when you installed it originally. Our eyes met, and for a fraction of a second, I glimpsed something cold and calculating behind his gaze. A stranger looking out from my husband's familiar face? Safety first, he said, lightly. Wouldn't want it falling on us in the middle of the night. No, I agreed. We wouldn't want that. William circled the room, examining the new curtains, the repositioned dressers, all while surreptitiously checking the baseboards, the air vents, the closet door, looking for signs of further exploration on my part. I realized, you've been busy, he finally said. It looks great. Really, thank you. I forced another smile. Are you hungry? Could make dinner. Starving, actually. Why don't I take a quick shower first? Wash off the travel grime. I nodded and left him in the bedroom, feeling his eyes on my back as I descended the stairs. In the kitchen, I began mechanically preparing a meal, listening to the sound of the shower running upstairs, wondering what William was really doing. Agent Chun had warned me that William might try to contact his associates or check his hidden evidence once he returned. They had the house under surveillance, monitoring all communications. As I chopped vegetables for a salad, my mind raced through the possible scenarios for the evening ahead. Would William make his move tonight? Or would he wait, observe me for signs of suspicion before proceeding with his plan? The shower stopped. A few minutes later, William appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair damp, dressed in fresh clothes. "Something smells good," he said. "Just pasta. Nothing fancy." He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, nuzzling my neck. "I really did miss you, Linda." I closed my eyes, fighting back revulsion at his touch, at the easy lies still flowing from him. "I missed you too." We ate dinner at the kitchen table, engaging in the surreal pretense of normal conversation. William told elaborate stories about meetings that had never happened, clients who didn't exist, deals that were pure fiction. I nodded and asked appropriate questions, playing my part in this macabre theater. After dinner, William insisted on loading the dishwasher while I made coffee. As he moved around the kitchen, I noticed him glancing repeatedly at his watch, expecting a call. I asked casually. He looked up, momentarily startled. "What?" "No. Habit, I guess. Been on a tight schedule the past couple weeks." Coffee finished brewing. I poured 2 mugs and handed one to William, who had moved to the living room and was scrolling through his phone. "Everything okay?" I asked, sitting across from him rather than beside him, as I normally would. "Fine." Set his phone down. "Just checking emails. Work never stops, you know." I nodded, sipping my coffee, watching him over the rim of my mug. Something had changed in his demeanor, subtle tension that hadn't been there before. "Linda," he'd said suddenly, "I've been thinking. We should take a vacation after the school year ends. Maybe somewhere tropical." "That sounds nice," I replied, knowing I was agreeing to a trip that would never happen. "Any place in particular?" I was thinking the Cayman Islands. We've never been. The Cayman Islands where he'd been transferring money, where he and Elise had purchased property through Horizon Holdings. I felt a chill despite the warm coffee in my hands. "That would be perfect," I said. "A fresh start." Williams's eyes narrowed slightly at my choice of words. "Exactly. A fresh start." He stood abruptly. I just remembered I need to make a quick call. Client issue I forgot to resolve before leaving. Won't take long. Of course, I watched as he retrieved his burner phone, not the one I'd found in his office, but another one pulled from his luggage, and stepped onto the back patio, closing the door behind him. Agent Chun had briefed me on this possibility. "If he makes calls, don't try to eavesdrop, obviously. We'll be monitoring all frequencies. Just act natural." I busied myself clearing away our coffee mugs, straining to glimpse William through the patio doors without being obvious. He stood with his back to the house, phone pressed to his ear, his posture rigid with tension. When he returned 5 minutes later, his expression was composed, but I detected an undercurrent of agitation in his movements. "Everything okay with your client?" I asked innocently. "Fine. Just a minor issue with the paperwork." He glanced at his watch again. "It's getting late. I'm still on Boston time, I guess. Mind if we turn in?" The moment I'd been dreading, being alone in our bedroom with him, pretending everything was normal, while wondering if this was when he planned to handle me. "Sure," I said, grateful that my voice remained steady. "I'm pretty tired myself." As we prepared for bed, the domestic routine felt like a cruel parody. William hanging his clothes neatly in the closet, me washing my face and applying moisturizer, both of us moving around each other in the familiar dance of a long-married couple. Except one of us was planning murder and the other was working with the FBI. I slid under the covers, my body tense with anticipation and fear. William joined me moments later, switching off the bedside lamp, plunging the room into darkness. "Good night," he murmured, leaning over to kiss my cheek. "Good night," I whispered back, turning away from him, curling onto my side, as far from his body as the bed would allow. Hours passed. I lay awake, listening to Williams's breathing, waiting for it to deepen into sleep. It never did. He was awake too, both of us feigning sleep, both waiting for something. Around 3 in the morning, I felt him shift, then carefully slide out of bed. Through slitted eyes, I watched as he retrieved his phone and slipped out of the bedroom. My heart pounded. This was it. He was making his move. I gave him 30 seconds, then silently followed, thankful for the new layout of our bedroom that positioned the bed away from the creaky floorboard near the door. William stood in his office, the door nearly closed, but not latched. A sliver of light spilled into the hallway. I crept closer, positioning myself to peer through the crack. He had removed the false floorboard and was examining the contents of the hidden compartment, the USB drive, and the burner phone I'd discovered. As I watched, he plugged the drive into his laptop and began reviewing files. His expression grimmed in the blue light of the screen. Suddenly he froze, then began typing frantically, scrolling through documents with increasing agitation. He picked up the burner phone, checking messages, his movements becoming more erratic. Something was wrong. He'd noticed something amiss with his records or communications. William yanked the USB drive from the computer and pulled out his personal phone, not the burner, but his regular cell. He dialed a number, his voice low but intense. "It's me. We have a problem. I think she knows. No, I'm not sure how much, but something's not right. The files have been accessed. Yes, I'm still moving forward with the plan, but we need to accelerate. Tomorrow night instead." "Yes, I'll handle it personally." My blood ran cold. Tomorrow night. Not some unnamed associate. William himself planned to handle me. I backed away from the door, retreating silently to the bedroom, slipping under the covers moments before William returned. I feigned sleep as he stood beside the bed, watching me for long, agonizing minutes before finally lying down again. Neither of us slept for what remained of the night. Morning brought weak sunshine and the pretense of normalcy. William announced over breakfast that he needed to go into the office to catch up on paperwork. "On a Saturday?" I asked, pouring coffee with a hand I forced not to tremble. "Just for a few hours." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Big project coming up. Need to prepare." As soon as he left, I contacted Agent Chun, reporting William's late-night phone call and his mention of tomorrow night. "We need to move now," I insisted. "He's planning something for tomorrow." "We're tracking him," Agent Chun assured me. "He's not going to the office. He's heading toward Baltimore. We have agents following him, and another team is preparing to secure Elise Chambers. We believe they're meeting with the Donovans today to finalize their arrangements." "Then what? You'll arrest them?" "Not yet. We need to catch them in the act of financial transaction or with evidence in their possession. Our team is in position at the Donovan offices. When they make their move, we'll be ready. And tonight, when William returns, we'll have agents inside your house before he gets back. You won't be alone with him again." The rest of the day passed in excruciating slowness. I cleaned obsessively, needing physical activity to dispel my nervous energy. Around noon, Agent Chun called with an update. William and Elise met with Michael Donovan at his office. They left with documents and what appeared to be new passports. They're currently at a bank in downtown Baltimore, accessing a safe deposit box. "They're getting ready to leave the country," I said. "Yes, but not before William returns home. We believe he's coming back tonight to eliminate any evidence and any witnesses that could connect him to the Donovans." My mouth went dry. "Me, you won't be in danger, Mrs. Reynolds. We'll have agents in place. But we need William to make a clear move that demonstrates his intent. You want to use me as bait." A pause. "We need evidence that will stand up in court by evening." FBI agents had installed themselves throughout my house, one posing as a plumber working on our kitchen sink, others hidden in closets and the guest room, all wired with communications equipment. Agent Chun herself remained in a van down the street, coordinating the operation. "William's on his way back," she informed me via the small earpiece I wore. 20 minutes. Remember, act natural but stay alert. If at any point you feel you're in imminent danger, use the panic phrase, and we'll move in immediately." The panic phrase. "I think I'll make some tea." Simple, casual, something I might say in normal conversation, but distinct enough to be recognized as a signal. I paced the living room, rehearsing how I would behave when William returns. Normal, but not too normal. Suspicious, but not overtly so. A delicate balance that might determine whether we gathered the evidence needed to put him away. Headlights swept across the living room as a car pulled into the driveway. I took a deep breath, positioned myself on the couch with a book I wasn't reading, and waited. William entered carrying a briefcase I hadn't seen before. His expression brightened artificially when he saw me. "Hey, you're still up." "Just reading," I said, holding up the book. How was the office? Productive. He set the briefcase down near the stairs. Got everything sorted out? That's good. I forced a smile. Hungry? I could heat up some leftovers. No, thanks. I grabbed something earlier. William glanced around the room, his gaze lingering on the plumber, still working under the kitchen sink. We still having problems with the drain? It's been backing up again. Jim said he'd take a look at it. William frowned slightly. Jim from next door? No, the plumber. Robinson Plumbing? We've used them before. He nodded, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. After a moment, he gestured toward the briefcase. I need to take care of a few things upstairs. Won't be long. As he climbed the stairs, Agent Chun's voice came through my earpiece. We have eyes on him. Stay downstairs for now. I pretended to read, ears straining for any sound from above. Minutes ticked by in excruciating slowness. Finally, William descended, his expression unreadable. The plumber almost finished? Not sure. He said it might take a while. William nodded, then moved to the kitchen, opening the refrigerator. Actually, I think I will have something to eat. He began assembling a sandwich, his back to me, movements deliberately casual. So, any plans for tomorrow? It's supposed to be nice out. I thought maybe we could drive out to the lake. We haven't been there in ages. Sounds perfect. He turned, sandwich in hand, smiling at me with chilling normalcy. A day just for us. A day I was never meant to see, according to his plans. We spent the evening in strained cordiality, watching a movie neither of us paid attention to, making small talk that felt like walking through a minefield. All the while, FBI agents monitored from hidden positions throughout the house. As we prepared for bed, William was solicitous, almost tender, bringing me a glass of water, asking if I wanted the window open or closed, behaving like the attentive husband he'd always pretended to be. I lay beside him in the darkness, every nerve ending alert, listening to his breathing, waiting for him to make his move. Hours passed. The digital clock on the nightstand showed 2:17 a.m. when William finally stirred, carefully extracting himself from the bed. Through barely open eyes, I watched as he moved to the closet, retrieving something from the top shelf, a small case I'd never seen before. He disappeared into the bathroom, returning moments later with latex gloves on his hands and what looked like a syringe. My heart pounded so loudly I feared he would hear it. This was it, the proof of his intentions. William approached my side of the bed, slowly, the syringe held at his side. I remained motionless, feigning sleep, fighting the instinct to flee. Just as he leaned over me, I opened my eyes and sat up abruptly. "What are you doing?" He froze, startled by my sudden movement. For a split second, the mask slipped, and I saw the cold calculation in his eyes before he recovered, hiding the syringe behind his back. "Nothing, honey. Just checking if you were asleep. Didn't mean to wake you. What's behind your back, William?" His expression hardened. "Go back to sleep, Linda. I think I'll make some tea," I said clearly, my voice remarkably steady despite the terror coursing through me. The reaction was instantaneous. The bedroom door burst open and FBI agents swarmed in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. William lunged toward me, syringe raised, but was tackled before he could reach me. The syringe skittered across the floor as agents subdued him, forcing him face down on the carpet. "William Reynolds, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and racketeering," Agent Chun announced, entering the room as William was handcuffed. "You have the right to remain silent." I sat on the edge of the bed, watching as the man I'd married, the man I thought I knew, read his rights and led away. His eyes met mine as they took him past me, cold, furious, but also somehow defeated. In that moment, I realized the enormity of what had happened, of what had almost happened. My husband had been prepared to kill me, to erase me from existence, so he could start a new life with another woman and millions in stolen money. The days that followed passed in a blur of interviews, depositions, and legal consultations. The FBI raid had netted not just William and Elise, but Michael and Patrick Donovan as well, along with evidence of money laundering operations stretching back nearly a decade. William faced multiple federal charges, each carrying substantial prison time. I filed for divorce immediately, working with prosecutors to ensure I wouldn't be held accountable for any of William's criminal activities. Our house, The house where he'd planned my murder was seized as evidence, but I had no desire to return there anyway. Sarah helped me find a small apartment in a different neighborhood, a place with no memories, no ghosts of a marriage that had been built on lies. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching as William pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for his testimony against the Donovans. The plea deal would still send him to prison for at least 15 years. He never looked at me during the proceedings. He never acknowledged my presence. As I left the courthouse that day, a reporter approached me. "Mrs. Reynolds, how does it feel knowing your husband planned to kill you?" I paused, considering the question. "It feels like waking up from a long dream," I finally said. "Painful, disorienting, but also clarifying. I see everything more clearly now." And I did. I saw how easy it is to build a life with someone without truly knowing them. How we construct narratives about our relationships that may bear little resemblance to reality. How love can blind us to truth. But I also saw my own strength, the resilience that had allowed me to uncover William's deception, to fight for my life, to rebuild from the ashes of what I'd thought was my perfect marriage. That evening, I stood in my new apartment looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Dinner tonight? Celebrating new beginnings?" I smiled and texted back, "Absolutely." As I set the phone down, I caught my reflection in the window glass. Older, certainly. Wearier in some ways, but also stronger, more determined. The woman who had rearranged bedroom furniture on a whim and uncovered a plot against her life. The woman who had survived. New beginnings, I whispered to my reflection. Then I turned away from the window, away from the past, and stepped forward into whatever came next.